This is Rummy's Corner. The Lineal World Heavyweight Championship, from John L Sullivan to Oleksandr Usyk. Usyk recently became the first undisputed world heavyweight champion in the modern four-belt era, and his status as being truly undisputed is beyond reproach. Because not only did Usyk win the WBC belt from Tyson Fury to go along with his other three major titles, but by beating Fury, Usyk likewise earned a valid claim to the Lineal World Heavyweight Championship. John L Sullivan was recognized as the first heavyweight world champion under the Marquess of Queensbury rules. That was back in the 1880s, long before the current mess of alphabet politics that plague the sport today. With four major sanctioning bodies today, the lineage remains a very important concept to this day. The man who beat the man. Sullivan's reign came to an end when he was stopped in the 21st round against gentleman J Corbett in September 1892. After Corbett defended the championship once, an unusual situation arose in November 1895 when Peter Maher defeated Steve O'Donnell, and after the fight, Corbett announced his retirement and gave his championship to Maher. After that, Maher was scheduled to face Bob Fitzsimmons the following February, but a month before Fitzsimmons stopped Maher in 95 seconds, Corbett announced he was back, effectively reinstating his claim as champion. And the reason I'm mentioning this is because I believe this helped set an historical precedent that took shape, which is relevant to the discussion involving Usyk and Fury nearly 128 years later. The point here being, despite the short retirement, Corbett's claim was still recognized as champion by popular opinion and public acceptance. This back when there were no governing bodies. In March 1897, matters would be settled when Corbett defended the championship against Fitzsimmons. And there they are, the first heavyweight championship contest ever captured on film. And it is truly amazing that these film clips are as clear as they are. It's extraordinary. The old footage is clear enough that you can see Bob's receding hairline. And just look at those trunks on Gentleman Jim. Difficult to imagine a heavyweight champion today wearing trunks like that. Corbett was in control for most of the contest and he dropped Fitzsimmons in round 6. But Fitzsimmons persevered and he rallied back to score a 14th round knockout. In June 1899, Fitzsimmons lost the crown when he was knocked out by James J Jeffries in round 11. Quick note, this is not actual footage, but reenactment footage of the fight. Jeffries made several more title defenses the next 5 years, and he retired as the undefeated world heavyweight champion in May 1905. This left a bit of a dilemma, as there were no governing bodies and no historical precedent for filling the vacant title. 2 months later, in July 1905, Jeffries refereed the bout that would produce a new heavyweight champion when Marvin Hart stopped Jack Root in round 12. But a lot of people didn't respect the new line because Hart never beat Jeffries, and Hart and Root were effectively nominated by Jeffries to fight for the right to become his successor. In February 1906, Tommy Burns beat Hart in a 20-round decision to become the new world heavyweight champion. Over the next several years, Burns was touring the world and beating top contenders, including the champions of Australia, England, Ireland, and France, and he made 11 title defenses where he won the support of public acceptance to solidify his claim to the heavyweight championship. In December 1908, Tommy Burns put the championship on the line against Jack Johnson, which was the first time a black challenger was afforded the opportunity to fight for the World Heavyweight Championship, effectively breaking the color barrier that existed during a time where things were far more racially divided. Johnson thoroughly dominated the action, and after 14 one-sided rounds, the police intervened and Johnson was awarded the championship by referee's decision. Johnson made a couple of defenses of the championship before former champion Jeffries had come out of retirement to challenge him. Now this was another interesting situation in the history of the heavyweight lineage. Jeffries hadn't fought in nearly 6 years, but there were still many who never respected the Hart-Burns-Johnson lineage following Jeffries' retirement, with Jeffries coming back, still undefeated, having never lost his title inside the ring. Some still viewed Jeffries as the rightful champion, a concept for many that may have also been racially motivated, in order to dismiss Jack Johnson's reign from history, where the Hart-Burns-Johnson lineage may have fallen into the dustbin of history, much like the Peter Maher Fitzsimmons lineage, which actually also arguably included Tom Sharkey. But the matter was settled once and for all on July 4th, 1910 in the fight of the century. Johnson was in complete control of that contest, and ultimately he stopped Jeffries in round 15. That victory solidified Jack Johnson's claim to the World Heavyweight Championship beyond reproach, removing any and all doubt that may have surfaced from the broken lineage when Jeffries first retired. So regardless of whether you accept the Maher Fitzsimmons lineage or the Hart-Burns-Johnson lineage, at the end of the day, there was no doubt whatsoever, Jack Johnson was the World Heavyweight Champion. In April 1915, Johnson defended his crown against Jess Willard. This one was scheduled for 45 rounds of action, which is incredible to imagine, especially for those of us who still long for the day of 15-round championship fights. Johnson was in control of the fight for most of the first 20 rounds, but fatigue began settling in as the challenger's heavy-handed blows began having a greater impact. Willard won the fight by knockout in round 26 to become the new heavyweight champion. Willard defended the title just once over the next 4 years, and then on July 4th, 1919, he had met his match when he went up against Jack Dempsey. The explosive power of the challenger was on full display right out of the gate, and Dempsey absolutely battered Willard, dropping him 7 times in the opening round. This was back in the day where a boxer was not required to go to a neutral corner after a knockdown. So Dempsey was able to just chill out and stand right over the fallen champion, where he could immediately begin pummeling him again. The fight was ultimately stopped when Willard failed to answer the bell for round 4, and Jack Dempsey was the new heavyweight champion. Dempsey made 5 defenses over the next several years, which included a gap of inactivity that lasted more than 3 years, before he finally returned to action in September 1926, when he faced challenger Gene Tunney. Tunney won the championship from Dempsey when he was awarded a 10-round unanimous decision. Tunney defended the championship twice, including the memorable victory in his rematch against Dempsey, famously known for the long count, this taking place after the rule change that required fighters go to a neutral corner following a knockdown. Tunney retired as the heavyweight champion in July 1928, and this caused another break in the lineage. But unlike Jeffries before him, Tunney never attempted a comeback, causing a true break this time. This is where the real precedent had been set to establish a new lineage. In June 1930, when Jack Sharkey and Max Schmeling, the 2 top-ranked guys, squared off for the vacant strap. At that time, Ring Magazine ranked Sharkey as the #1 heavyweight in the world, and Schmeling at #2. Sharkey was disqualified for landing a low blow near the end of round 4, which marked Schmeling as the first boxer in history to win the heavyweight championship by disqualification. After Schmeling made 1 title defense, he had a rematch with Sharkey in June 1932, and this time around Sharkey was awarded a 15-round split decision to win the championship, and that victory was a controversial one where most believed Schmeling deserved to win. In June 1933, Primo Carnera became the new heavyweight champion when he stopped Sharkey in round 6. After Carnera made a couple of defenses, his reign came to an end in June 1934 when he was absolutely bludgeoned by Max Baer. Carnera absorbed a great deal of punishment in this one, and he was dropped time and time again, despite putting forth a brave and admirable effort where he was at times being competitive. The champion was dropped 11 or so times along the way, where some debate does exist over the exact number of knockdowns. But regardless of the actual number, the fight was ultimately stopped in the 11th, and Baer was the new heavyweight champion. A year later, in June 1935, Baer defended his title for the first time when he went up against 10-1 underdog James J. Braddock. Despite being a big underdog, Braddock defied the odds in this one, and the Cinderella Man put forth a legendary underdog performance when he beat Baer by 15-round unanimous decision. Braddock defended his championship for the first time 2 years later in June 1937, when he went up against the Brown Bomber, Joe Louis. Braddock dropped Lewis in the opening round and put forth a strong effort, but Lewis recovered and quickly found his groove to take control of the action. Lewis landed a big right hand in round 8 to score a knockout, and the Brown Bomber had become the new world heavyweight champion. Lewis went on to defend the championship 25 times over the next 11 plus years before he officially announced his retirement in March 1949. His retirement would not last very long, however, and during his absence, Ezzard Charles beat Jersey Joe Walcott by 15-round unanimous decision where he won the vacant NBA title. But the vacant NYSAC title was not on the line, and it is probably worth noting that Ring Magazine and the British Board of Boxing Control did not recognize Charles as the world heavyweight champion. The Cincinnati Cobra had made 3 more title defenses, and Joe Louis came out of retirement to face Charles in September 1950, and this time the vacant NYSAC title was on the line, in addition to the NBA belt. And of course, Joe Louis was still the man who beat the man. Charles won the fight by 15-round unanimous decision, which furthered his claim to the World Heavyweight Championship, and it provided Ezzard Charles with a valid claim to the lineage that was beyond reproach. The Cincinnati Cobra defended the crown 4 times after he beat Lewis, and in July 1951, Ezzard defended the championship in his 3rd fight against Jersey Joe. Charles had already beaten Jersey Joe twice, but in this rivalry, the 3rd time's a charm for Walcott. Jersey Joe scored a devastating knockout in round 7 when he leveled Charles with a menacing left hook. Walcott was a 9-1 underdog in this one, and with that victory, at age 37, he had become the oldest heavyweight champion in history. Walcott made a title defense the following June when he won a 15-round unanimous decision in his 4th fight against Ezzard. In September 1952, Walcott took on undefeated challenger Rocky Marciano. The champion dropped Marciano in the opening round and proceeded to control most of the action as this one would evolve into a prolonged war of attrition. Marciano started working his way inside more effectively as the fight progressed, but Walcott was still generally doing a better job of winning this strategic battle of range. In the 13th round, just as Walcott was trying to walk Marciano into a trap, Rocky unleashed a thunderous monster right hand to score a dramatic knockout victory, which earned him the heavyweight crown. Marciano went on to make 6 defenses of his championship over the next 3+ years before officially announcing his retirement in April 1956. Marciano remains the only heavyweight champion in history to retire and remain retired as the undefeated world heavyweight champion. But with Rocky's retirement came another break in the lineage. In November 1956, the vacant championship was on the line when Ring Magazine's #1 ranked heavyweight Archie Moore, the Old Mongoose, squared off against Ring's #2 rated heavyweight Floyd Patterson. In round 5, Patterson dropped Archie with a sharp left hook. Moore made it to his feet, but Patterson soon had him down again, and this time Archie could not beat the count. With the victory, Floyd Patterson was crowned as the new world heavyweight champion, marking him as the youngest boxer to ever win the heavyweight crown. Patterson defended the championship 4 times over the next 2+ years. And then in June 1959, Patterson put his championship on the line against Ingemar Johansson. In a devastating display in round 3, Ingo dropped Patterson time and time again in a round that was an absolute nightmare for the champion. After he suffered the 7th knockdown in the round, the referee mercifully stopped it, and Johansson had become the new heavyweight champion. A year later, in June 1960, Patterson and Johansson had an immediate rematch, and this time around Patterson was much sharper right out of the gate. In round 5, Patterson scored 2 knockdowns, the last of which was a picture-perfect demolition job of a left hook that knocked Ingemar out cold. Patterson became the first boxer in history to regain the heavyweight crown, which is historically significant, especially when you consider that in the 60-plus years before that, 8 former heavyweight champions had tried and failed, going 0-11 for their efforts, until Patterson finally did it. Patterson defended the championship 2 more times, which included a rubber match knockout victory against Ingo. In September 1962, Sonny Liston became the new heavyweight champion when he destroyed Patterson in round 1. It was a damn fine display of power from Liston. Sonny made 1 title defense, a rematch against Patterson that resulted in another brutal first-round knockout. That was another damn fine display of power from Liston. In February 1964, Liston faced challenger Muhammad Ali, who was then known as Cassius Clay. Liston was a considerable favorite going in, but Ali overcame the odds and put forth a showcase performance. Ali utilized his incredible speed and quickness to provide a very slippery and elusive target. Within the realm of the sweet science, this was an absolute masterclass performance in the art of hitting without getting hit. Liston failed to answer the bell to begin round 7 and the fight was over, and Muhammad Ali had become the new world heavyweight champion. When Ali was set to make his first title defense against Liston, he was stripped by the WBA version of the belt, as we have now entered the dawn of the modern 2-belt era, although the NYSAC belt was still a thing then too, but was on its way out. Despite being stripped by the WBA, Ali still held a rightful claim as the true lineal champion. Ali would eventually regain the very same WBA belt when he beat Ernie Terrell. And in total, from the time he won the crown against Liston, Ali made 9 consecutive title defenses. In the spring of 1967, however, Ali was officially stripped of his undisputed championship and his boxing license was suspended. Despite no longer holding the WBA or WBC titles, Ali never lost his championship inside the ring, and therefore he still held a valid claim as the true lineal world heavyweight champion. By the time Ali had his boxing license reinstated in June 1970, Smokin' Joe Frazier had already stopped Jimmy Ellis to become the new WBA and WBC heavyweight champion, and that was technically the last of the NYSAC heavyweight championship before it was adopted into and became a part of the WBC. So Frazier was technically the undisputed WBA, WBC heavyweight champion, but having never lost the crown inside the ring, Ali still had a rightful claim as the lineal world heavyweight champion, the man who beat the man. This created the perfect storm scenario for the March 1971 bout between Muhammad Ali and Smokin' Joe Frazier, which was captivating in ways that were and remain unprecedented. It was billed as the fight of the century, and the event actually lived up to and exceeded its lofty expectations in an absolute battle for the ages. You had 2 elite heavyweight prize fighters, both undefeated, both near the peak of their abilities, and each man had a valid claim to call himself the heavyweight champion of the world. The brilliant clash of contrasting styles produced one of the most exciting and memorable heavyweight championship encounters of all time. At the end of 15 heated rounds of action, Smokin' Joe Frazier was awarded a unanimous decision where Frazier earned a rightful claim to the lineage to solidify his standing as the one and only heavyweight champion of the world. Frazier would defend his crown twice after that, and then in January 1973, Frazier's reign came to an end when he went up against Big George Foreman. Frazier was overwhelmed by an absolutely brutal display of power from Foreman. Big George dropped Smokin' Joe 3 times in the opening round, and he dropped him 3 more times in the following round before the fight was mercifully stopped. Foreman defended the championship twice, and then in October 1974, Foreman squared off against former heavyweight world champion Muhammad Ali. Big George was the favorite going in, but Ali proved very clever and resourceful in this one. Ali was using a combination of movement, crowding, space, and ring smarts to neutralize Foreman's heavy attacks. Ali was twisting and turning and blocking and dodging, and he was also utilizing the loose ropes to great advantage. Slowly but surely, with each passing round, Ali was effectively wearing Foreman down. Things came to an end in round 8 when Ali unloaded with a series of sharp shots that sent Foreman staggering down, and he did not beat the count. This marked Ali as a 2-time undisputed lineal world heavyweight champion. Ali went on to defend the heavyweight crown 10 times over the next 3+ years. And then in February 1978, Ali faced relative novice Leon Spinks. In an upset effort, Spinks was awarded a 15-round split decision victory, and in what was just his 8th professional fight, it was the shortest span to do so in heavyweight history. Spinks was stripped by the WBC for signing to have a rematch with Ali, and the rematch happened in September 1978, so only the WBA belt was at stake, but more importantly, this was a fight for the lineal crown. Ali avenged his earlier loss, and he was awarded a 15-round unanimous decision to win back the WBA and Lineal World Heavyweight Championship. This provided Ali with the unique distinction of becoming the only boxer to become a 3-time lineal heavyweight champion. Ali officially announced his retirement in July 1979, but that retirement was short-lived, and by the following April, Ali was scheduled to face Larry Holmes in October. In Ali's short absence, a new lineage was never formed by the top 2 contenders squaring off. Holmes was the WBC heavyweight champion who had already made 7 defenses, and Mike Weaver was the WBA champion, a man Holmes had already beaten in a title defense before Weaver won the other title belt against Tate. Regardless, Ali had never lost his championship inside the ring and was still the man to beat. By that point, Ali was badly faded, and Holmes dominated the fight, which was eventually stopped by Ali's corner after the 10th round. This earned Larry a rightful claim to the lineage. Holmes continued making title defenses the next several years, and eventually he vacated the WBC belt and was named as the inaugural IBF heavyweight champion in December 1983, providing the new sanctioning body with instant credibility. By the time Holmes faced Michael Spinks in September 1985, he was a perfect 48-0 and accumulated 20 consecutive title defenses. With a brilliant blend of speed, quickness, and aggressiveness, Spinks boxed exceptionally well. Spinks was using great movement and putting together sneaky attacks with quick combinations that left Holmes looking uncharacteristically confused. At the end of 15 rounds, Spinks won the IBF and Lineal World Championship by unanimous decision. This was the first time 2 brothers had ever won the Lineal World Heavyweight Championship. Spinks defended the IBF belt twice before he was stripped by the organization in February 1987. Not long after that, Iron Mike Tyson had unified all 3 major belts of the day, the WBA, WBC, and IBF. But despite technically being the undisputed heavyweight champion, Michael Spinks still held a rightful claim as the lineal world heavyweight champion. So even though Spinks was not holding a major title, Spinks remained the man who beat the man. It was June 1988, and while the circumstances were different, it was another situation where we had 2 undefeated heavyweights, each of whom had a valid claim to call himself the heavyweight champion of the world. This bout settled matters beyond any shadow of a doubt, and Tyson stopped Spinks in devastating fashion in the opening round, making Iron Mike Tyson the baddest man on the planet, with all 3 major belts of his day and a valid claim as lineal world champion. In February 1990, Tyson put his undisputed Lineal championship on the line against James Buster Douglas in Tokyo. It was a perfect storm scenario for Douglas, where his mental determination going into the contest, against a man who is arguably the most feared in the rich history of boxing, his determination was the stuff of legends that night. Tyson was perceived as an invincible, unbeatable force, but the recent passing of his mother motivated Buster to new heights. On that night, he had quite literally transformed and evolved into Tokyo Douglas, where he overcame adversity along the way, while putting forth an epic underdog performance of a lifetime. Tokyo Douglas defeated Iron Mike Tyson by an amazingly dramatic 10th round knockout to become the new undisputed and lineal world heavyweight champion. In his very next fight in October 1990, Douglas no longer had that same fire and determination when he faced undefeated challenger Evander "Real Deal" Holyfield. The Real Deal's quickness was giving Douglas a lot of problems, and in round 3, Holyfield nailed Douglas with a sensational counter right hand to score a knockout. Holyfield went on to make 3 consecutive title defenses, and all of them were for the true, undisputed, and lineal world championship. In November 1992, Holyfield squared off against undefeated challenger Riddick Big Daddy Bowe. This one quickly evolved into an action-packed slugfest, with several crowd-pleasing shifts in momentum along the way. Both boxers were showcasing an eagerness to stand and trade, but as things progressed into the later rounds, Holyfield was having difficulty coping with the size and strength of Big Daddy. Holyfield was dropped late in the fight, but he showed unwavering heart and determination as he did everything he could do to try and battle his way back. At the end of 12 rounds of intense action, Bowe became the new heavyweight champion when he was awarded a unanimous decision victory. A year later, in November 1993, Bowe and Holyfield had a rematch. This fight is remembered for the bizarre fan man incident that interrupted the action, but the fight itself was captivating and memorable. By this time, Bowe had vacated the WBC belt, but he still held the WBA and IBF, and a rightful claim to the lineage. This time around, Holyfield was more focused on patiently boxing at a measured pace. There was still a lot of fireworks that saw both boxers having spots of success, but the overall rhythm was far more nuanced and tactical. Both warriors strategically battled it out until the final bell, and at the end of 12 rounds of action, Holyfield was awarded a razor-thin majority decision. This marked Holyfield as a 2-time lineal champion, placing him in exclusive company with Floyd Patterson and Muhammad Ali. Holyfield's next fight was in April 1994 against undefeated challenger Michael Moore. Holyfield landed a sneaky left in round 2 that dropped Moore to the canvas, but the challenger rebounded from the knockdown, and he put forth a workmanlike effort where he was boxing very cleverly and effectively. It was a close and competitive contest, and at the end of 12 rounds of action, Moore won a majority decision to capture the IBF, WBA, and Lineal World Championship. Moore's next fight was in November 1994 against former heavyweight world champion Big George Foreman. It had been more than 20 years since Foreman lost the title to Muhammad Ali, and at 45 years old, few observers were giving Foreman a chance against the 26-year-old champion. Moore was able to outbox Foreman with quickness and movement. Foreman was having a lot of difficulty finding his range. But in round 10, it happened. By George, it happened. Foreman belted Moore with a 1-2 punctuated by a booming right hand that dropped the champion hard. Moore was down and he would not be beating the count. 45-year-old George Foreman had just become the oldest boxer to ever win the Lineal World Heavyweight crown, a record that still stands to this day. This also marked Foreman as the 4th man to win the Lineal crown more than once. Foreman was stripped of the WBA belt in March 1995, and after making one controversial defense of the IBF, Foreman vacated the IBF in June 1995. Technically speaking, although Foreman no longer held claim to any of the major championship belts at that time, he still held a rightful claim to the lineal heavyweight crown. It was the same type of situation we had when Michael Spinks had no belts, but he was still the man who beat the man. Foreman was then provided a feasible path to challenging WBC heavyweight champion Lennox Lewis, provided he first won a November 1997 elimination bout against Shannon the Cannon Briggs. Foreman put forth a tremendous effort in this one. Indeed, Foreman looked as good as he had looked in years, effectively applying pressure and working behind the jab, and he progressively started landing more power shots which began taking a toll on Shannon the Cannon. Foreman finished the fight strong, but at the end of 12 rounds of action, Briggs was awarded a controversial 12-round majority decision. In March 1998, Briggs went up against WBC champion Lennox Lewis, and Briggs went into that one as the man who beat the man. This was an exciting battle where Briggs hurt Lennox early on in the fight, but Lewis persevered and fought his way back with a mean showcase of power, where he dropped Briggs 3 times and scored a 5th round stoppage. So with that win, Lewis retained his WBC belt, and more importantly, he earned a rightful claim as the lineal world heavyweight champion. During his reign, Lewis managed to become the undisputed champion when he beat Holyfield in November 1999 to earn all 3 major titles of his day. Although his undisputed reign was technically short-lived when the WBA stripped him in April 2000, but Lewis still held 2 out of the 3 belts and a rightful claim to the lineal crown. In April 2001, however, Lewis went up against Hasim Rahman. Lennox was the sizable favorite going in, but Rahman knocked him out with a devastating well-timed right in round 5. Later that year in November, Lennox gladly returned the favor when he brutally knocked out Rahman in round 4. It was a picture-perfect highlight reel knockout, and Lennox had regained his unified IBF WBA belts, along with again earning a rightful claim to the lineage, which marks Lennox as the 5th and final boxer to date to ever recapture the lineal World Heavyweight Championship. Lennox had his final bout in June 2003 when he beat Vitali Klitschko by TKO 6, and Lewis officially announced his retirement in February 2004. Following his retirement, there would be a very long gap before a new lineal world heavyweight champion would be crowned. Vitali Klitschko was considered the best heavyweight for a short spell, but he never beat the other top heavyweight at that time, which just so happened to be his former conqueror, Chris Bird. Some view this as a bit of a gray area, because when Vitali was considered the best, he did beat Corey Sanders, who Ring Magazine generously rated as number 3 at that time. Dr. Iron Fist announced his retirement in November 2005, although he would make a very successful comeback 3 years later. The post-Lewis era gets a little confusing, because for a bulk of that stretch, the Klitschko brothers were undoubtedly the 2 best heavyweights in the world, and they understandably refused to fight each other. But one way or another, Wladimir is considered the next lineal world champion. His June 2009 victory against Ruslan Shagayev is widely viewed as that new start, although there are some who believe it did not begin until after Vlad beat Alexander Povetkin in October 2013. Either way, Wladimir Klitschko is a dominant force who collected 3 of the 4 major belts during a reign that would ultimately last nearly a decade, and during which time he made an incredible 18 consecutive title defenses, where only the Brown Bomber and the Eastern Assassin have more. And as a side note, the WBO belt became a major world title by Vladimir's reign, where he transitioned us into the modern 4-belt era. In November 2015, Wladimir squared off against undefeated challenger Tyson Fury. Fury neutralized the potent and methodical offense of Dr. Steelhammer, and this fight represented the end of the Klitschko era, where the two brothers had dominated the division, either collectively or individually. The Klitschko brothers had dominated the heavyweight landscape for the better part of 11 years, where Wladimir was the dominant force during that stretch. Tyson Fury won by 12-round unanimous decision, ushering in a new era of heavyweight boxing history. Fury won the unified IBF, WBA, WBO belts and had earned a valid claim to the lineage. Subsequently, Fury had his license suspended, and he was stripped of one title, and he vacated the other two he had won from Wladimir. Fury did not fight at all in 2016 or 2017, and he ultimately made his return in June of 2018. But Fury was still the man who beat the man, and none of what happened here was unprecedented. We already had rightful lineal champions who did not technically hold an alphabet belt. And historically speaking, retirements that aren't real retirements do not end a lineage. Because the entire concept of the lineage is you could only lose that honor inside the ring. And him being out of action for 2+ years is not unprecedented either. Nor was it the longest stretch of inactivity historically. And even with the suspension, that also has a precedent. The famous case involving Ali. Now, there are some dissenting voices out there that say Wladimir was never the rightful lineal champion, which I personally reject that viewpoint outright. But even for the small faction that holds that unpopular view, the lineage eventually went to Fury anyway, because him and Deontay Wilder were both ranked as the top 2 heavyweights for their February 2020 rematch. But that didn't make Fury a 2-time lineal heavyweight champion, because he already was the lineal heavyweight world champion. And that leads us to the recent showdown for undisputed heavyweight supremacy between Tyson Fury and Oleksandr Usyk. This was a situation where Usyk was the undefeated unified IBF, WBA, WBO heavyweight champion, and Fury was the undefeated WBC and lineal world heavyweight champion. Not only did Usyk become the first undisputed world heavyweight champion since the great Lennox Lewis, and not only did Usyk become the first undisputed heavyweight champion in the modern 4-belt era, but he did so beyond reproach. When Fury announced one of his fake retirements before Chisora 3, Ring Magazine inexplicably declared that the winner of Usyk Joshua 2 would become the new lineal world champion. But that is simply not true. Fury remained the rightful lineal world champion, having never lost that distinction inside the ring to that point. Hell, even the shady WBC never acted on that so-called fake retirement. And historically, fake or short-lived retirements have never broken the lineage. We need look no further than the Peter Maher example. Maher technically may have started a new lineage, but history, founded on the public acceptance of the time, Maher's claim failed, whereas Marvin Hart's did not. And Hart's claim was largely boosted by the fact that Burns' reign lended it credibility and acceptance. It's also no different than several of the fake non-retirements Muhammad Ali had in the late 70s. And hell, if you really want to get technical, the man himself, John L Sullivan, had a retirement in 1890, but that didn't break the lineage. And boxing history has accepted the lineal transfer from Sullivan to Corbett as valid, having survived the test of time because public acceptance steered the past as it did. To be sure, tracing the lineage is not always an exact science, and it often takes time for the dust to settle in the aftermath of a break. The key ones being the guys who retired and remained retired as champion, mainly the big 3 who fit the bill: Gene Tunney, Rocky Marciano, and Lennox Lewis. And then even Jeffries' retirement, where he came back nearly 6 years later. Whether you consider the Maher, Fitzsimmons, Sharkey branch, which most do not, predicated on the lack of public acceptance at that time, or even whether you accept the Hart, Burns, Johnson branch, which most generally do and should, if you eliminate one or both of those branches, you still ultimately wind up going from Jeffries to Johnson, with or without those intermediary branches. These sorts of things tend to eventually work themselves out. I've even seen some people question the validity of Larry Holmes's claim to the lineage. But again, short-lived fake retirements don't change the concept. It's about the man who beat the man. Ezzard Charles was the man who ultimately beat Joe Louis. Larry Holmes was the man who ultimately beat Muhammad Ali. And now Oleksandr Usyk is the man who ultimately beat Tyson Fury, and this is significant. It is very similar to Iron Mike beating Michael Spinks. To be truly undisputed, Tyson needed to be the one to beat Spinks, the rightful lineal champion, because that's an important piece of the puzzle where the concept is intended to trace the true champion at any given time in the alphabet mess that complicates the sport today. By beating Spinks, Tyson became truly undisputed, not just earning the 3 major belts of his day, but earning the status as the man who beat the man. And while the situation is a little different, with Usyk having had 3 of the 4, and then beating Fury to win that 4th belt, and a rightful claim to the lineage, it puts his undisputed status truly beyond any shadow of a doubt. Make no mistake, Oleksandr Usyk is the undisputed lineal world heavyweight champion, and the alphabet bodies may technically ruin the undisputed part of it, with the IBF already scheming away, but he will remain the lineal world heavyweight champion until someone beats him, or until he really retires without ever coming back. Until one of those things happen, Oleksandr will remain the one and only true lineal world heavyweight champion. Alphabet politics cannot strip him of that status. It can only be lost in the ring. Oleksandr Usyk has unquestionably immortalized himself, not just in boxing history where he already had a massive legacy based on his work at cruiserweight alone, but also in boxing's marquee weight class, the heavyweight division, where Oleksandr the Great has become a leading heavyweight pioneer and a heavyweight legend of the modern 4-belt era, and his impact will forever be etched into the long, rich history of professional boxing. Once again, congratulations to Oleksandr Usyk for making boxing history. Thank you very much for watching, everyone. I hope you enjoyed, and have a wonderful night. This is Rummy's Corner.